They're one of the favorites for the World Cup, or are they? This is our look at Portugal as we continue to preview every team going to the World Cup. We are in the final group. Holy smokes, this has been a journey, and I haven't slept the entire time. Portugal is the top team in Group H at the World Cup, but their qualification was anything but simple and not exactly something that would be indicative of a top team. You see, Portugal qualifies out of Europe, obviously. In their qualification, they had Serbia, Ireland, Luxembourg, Azerbaijan in their group, but Portugal is clearly the biggest name in this group of teams, and for a lot of the qualifying, things seem to be going well. They had a 2-2 draw away to Serbia, but yeah, it's a tough match. They'd won their next 5. Right, they won the other 5 games. They're going into the last 2 matches with a comfortable lead in their group. They just have to take care of business. And that was where problems happened. You see, on the 11th of November, Portugal had to go to Dublin, the Aviva Stadium, against Ireland. Ireland's already out at this point. They're not going to make the World Cup, but Portugal can't score. They're unable to score. It's 0-0, and that draw keeps the door open for Serbia to grab the automatic qualifying spot at the top of the group. But still, if you're Portugal, you're playing at home, you're at Estadio da Luz, the big stadium in Lisbon. There's like 60,000 people gonna be there. There's no way you're gonna lose to Serbia at home and blow it. And that's not what happened initially. They scored in the 2nd minute. It was an issue for Nemanja Gadel. He falls over, ball into the back of the net. Beautiful. But Serbia comes back, scores a goal in the first half, and then a goal in the 90th minute to stun Portugal. And Portugal picks up 1 point from its last 2 matches to finish a clean 3 points behind Serbia. It was a joke. It was a bottle job. They fumbled it away in the last 2 matches, and Serbia took advantage and managed to not lose at any point, where Portugal freaking got 1 point from its last 2 matches. That sends Portugal to the playoff, the European qualification playoff, which was new this qualifying cycle. And Portugal's luck seemed to turn horrifically because they were drawn in the same section as Italy, who also failed to get the automatic qualifying spot. So we're looking at a Portugal-Italy showdown in the final of qualifying in the playoffs, but then Italy goes and loses to North Macedonia in Rome. This puts Portugal in a heck of a spot, and Portugal takes advantage. They score 2 goals, take a comfy lead over Turkey, but then they start bottling it again. Burak Yilmaz scores in the 2nd half. Then Yilmaz has a penalty to tie the game at 2 right at the end, and he skies it. The Turkish talisman skies the game-tying penalty over the bar. Portugal scores an insurance goal in the 94th minute, and now Portugal's going to their final matchup, a David versus Goliath matchup against North Macedonia. Bruno Fernandes scores a brace, and Portugal is going to the World Cup once again, but it was anything but comfy. And it would have been weird if Portugal wasn't there, because they've become a new world power in the sport. And for people like me that were introduced to this game because we played FIFA growing up in the United States, Portugal feels like a team that was always great, but they weren't. World Cups have been happening since 1930, and Portugal only played in 2 ever until this millennium. Portugal qualified in 1966 and 1986, and then qualified in 2002 and has made every single World Cup since. This includes a 4th place finish in the 2006 World Cup, which is their 2nd best. In 66, they actually finished 3rd in the England tournament. But recently, Portugal has struggled to mount a deep run in the World Cup, in spite of their huge talent. In 2014, Portugal got grouped at the World Cup by none other than the United States. The United States of America! Yeah! Subscribe. At the World Cup in 2018, Portugal had what seemed to be an easy group, but really struggled to survive it. After one of the best matches I've ever seen at a World Cup, Portugal and Spain played a 3-3 draw in the opener. Then Portugal beat Morocco 1-0, but really struggled with Iran. Iran scored a late penalty to equalize 1-1. If Iran had scored again, Portugal was out. Portugal gets a favorable draw despite finishing 2nd in their group, but they lose to Uruguay 2-1 in the round of 16. Their World Cup history generally looks like a waste of talent overall, but in the Euros, it's been a different story. Their continental competitions have been more encouraging. Portugal's made every European championship since 1996, and in 4 of the last 6, they've made at least the semifinals, which is a level they haven't reached since 2006 at the World Cup. This culminated in Portugal winning the European Championship in 2016. That obviously didn't translate to success at the World Cup, but recently, Portugal just had its worst performance ever at the Euros. Well, at least their worst performance after qualifying. They ended up in the group of death and finished 3rd behind France and Germany with a draw against France and a win over Hungary. But then going into the round of 16, they played Belgium and just lost. Every time Portugal qualified for the Euros, they'd gotten at least to the quarterfinals. So that makes this like the worst Portuguese team at the Euros in the last 25 5 years. If you want something positive to hang on to, Portugal did at least have a good Nations League. That's the most recent competition, all 6 of those matches happening in the last 6 months, and Portugal actually was leading its group until the final match day when it lost at home to Spain. So bottled it a little bit again, but they did finish second and will stay in Nations League A. And it follows a trend of struggling against these good teams. They couldn't get any serious points off Spain. They got 1 point off them in 2 matches. They lost away to Switzerland, who's definitely good. And a lot of stars in the national team are waning, but one that's not is my player to focus on. That is Bernardo Silva. The winger from Manchester City, this has to be his time. Cristiano Ronaldo is not getting regular playing time at Manchester United. Bruno Fernandes is not playing nearly as well as he used to at Manchester United. And honestly, I feel like their problem is they're relying on players at Manchester United. Diogo Jota, the striker from Liverpool, he's out injured. So they need a star, and Bernardo Silva is a star. The midfielder, winger, general attacking threat has 5 assists in 12 matches in the Premier League so far this season. He is part of the ridiculously potent Manchester City attack and has one of the highest technical floors of any player in the world. The problem for Bernardo Silva is that he's never quite been looked at club or international level as the feature guy to carry a team. And if Portugal wants something special to happen, I'm picking him out as the guy that has to do it, because, well, honestly, Fernando Santos doesn't like Joao Felix, or else I would be picking him. I think he's younger and has perhaps a higher ceiling than Bernardo Silva, but Fernando Santos, the coach of the team, loves Bernardo Silva. He's on the field all the time. He needs to be assertive and use his quality to create assists and goals for Portugal at this tournament, or Portugal is going to struggle. And I mentioned he's been in the lineup for them all the time. Well, that's because I've looked at their lineup for the past 10 matches they've played, and Fernando Santos and his team love a 4-3-3 and a 4-2-3-1. They keep it simple. 4-2-3-1 gives them a bit more opportunity to take advantage of 4 more attack-minded players, like this lineup they had against Czechia, where Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, and Rafael Leao were featuring behind Ronaldo. And Leao is part of an answer to a question that's going to be asked. Without Jota, who is the preferred third partner with Fernandes and with Bernardo Silva, Rafael Leao, Joao Felix, or maybe Otavio are the options. We don't know for sure who's going to fill that spot at the World Cup. William Carvalho, Ruben Neves, and Joao Palhinha are all good holding midfielders that can play at any level and match anyone. If they want to add some passing in a deeper role, Joao Moutinho of Wolves is still available. Their fullbacks are world-class. Joao Cancelo from Manchester City on one side, Nuno Mendes from PSG on the other. Then you have the old experience of Pepe compared to one of the best center backs in the world in Ruben Dias. And the last interesting decision is Diogo Costa of Porto is going to be the starting goalkeeper. All indications are he's going to be the starting goalkeeper over Rui Patricio. So this will be his first major tournament as the feature guy between the pipes. And it's Portugal, so you know the rest of the bench has quality and depth. This is the whole lineup right here. You can see the club that they play for on the right. And you're going to see great clubs, great players, players with high pedigrees, high technical floors, a Portuguese team. There is nothing talent-wise that is stopping Portugal from contending for everything at this World Cup. It's just their form. They're not playing well, and key players for them are not playing well. And that opens up into a group that has become fascinating. Uruguay is consistent as ever. They're very good, competitive, and they work their butt off. South Korea is buoyant after beating Germany at the World Cup 4 years ago, and they've got their best ever attacking player, Son Heung-min, who is lighting the world on fire at Tottenham. He tied for the Golden Boot last year. And then there's Ghana, who I didn't think was very good at all in African qualifying, but they have been poaching players that now have the opportunity to play at a World Cup to bolster their national team and go from lucky to be there to competitive. There's not a lot of room to slip for Portugal, and if they continue their poor form against good teams, they could really struggle in this group, especially if they become over-reliant on Ronaldo, who, don't get me wrong, he's gonna score at this tournament. He's Ronaldo. But he's also not old Ronaldo, right? He is now old Ronaldo. This is the same definition of the word. That's confusing. Hi, we're going to do live watch-alongs of the entire World Cup on Twitch, which I know is scary, but we're just going to be hanging out watching the games together every World Cup match. The link is down in the description. I will see you there. Hated that. What was that? I'm going to pick Portugal to win this group just because they have so much freaking talent. It'll blow my mind if they don't. But I know that there are a lot of Portuguese that watch this channel, and they're frustrated with their coach, and I feel like they're not getting the most of that talent, and I agree with you. And I think it could put Portugal in a difficult spot. Portugal has underachieved at World Cups in recent times, and this feels like a spot where they are primed to struggle. But I can't go so far as to pick them to not finish first. I'm gonna pick them to finish first in this group. If you enjoyed this video, I have great news for you. You can binge the rest of the World Cup previews right in that top corner. It's a nice little playlist. It'll just roll on to the next one in order through the entire World Cup, and you'll blow your whole family away with your knowledge. It'll be great.